guys can go ahead and grab a sit down. Thanks for being here. My name is Zach, in case you don't know. I try to meet everybody. I apologize if I haven't gotten the chance to meet you yet. And then I try to remember everybody's names. I'm not perfect. I know there's a few of you already have been like, remind me of your name again. But just know I'm trying. All right, I'm trying. I want to know you guys by name. Anyway, today, if you didn't know, there might be like a big sign somewhere that's going to allude you to the scripture that we're going to dive into, which is Jeremiah 29:11. In fact, it is the title of the message, in case you couldn't figure it out. I think there's a big sign. I stole that picture. It was great. I technically didn't steal it. It's a free website. All right, unsplash.com. Holla back. Anyway, so if you don't know the verse, here is what it is. I think I put this part in your notes there, but it's Jeremiah 29:11. It says, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future." And this is a great verse. You see it thrown around a lot at like every high school graduation, right? Like how many of you guys got some sort of graduation card with this verse written on it? Not nearly as many as I thought were going to raise their hands. That's cool. That's cool. But you see it thrown around a lot, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but I do think that we slightly take this verse out of context. And so I thought tonight would be a good time to kind of deep dive what this verse is talking about, or just the full context, the full understanding of what this verse is. And I think it's going to be just an even better meaning for us when we do that. So, and I'll get to why I think it's slightly out of context, slightly not out of context. But to give you some context as to what's happening, so Jeremiah chapter 29, verses 1 through 23 is what we're going to dive into. But what's happening here is the nation of Judah is basically being taken over by Babylon, right? And so there's a series of exiles that are happening. This letter is written to the people who were part of like the third exile. And then they would eventually move on and they would tear down the temple and all that stuff. So one cool thing to take note is that this letter is written somewhere around, I wasn't supposed to talk about this yet, so it's further down in my notes. It's written somewhere around 590 BC. The temple wasn't torn down until 586 BC. So this letter is written to people who are kind of in captivity, people who have been exiled from their homeland and into another homeland. And what you'll notice in Jeremiah, if you ever read through it, it can be a little confusing because you might be reading it and just being like, the heck is this guy talking about? And it's because while a lot of books in the Old Testament will read like a history book, right? They'll tell you every little thing that's happening and going on. Jeremiah is more issuing warnings to the leadership of Judah, but then also writing responses after events happen. So he's not recording the event itself, right? He's not recording the exile itself. He is recording a response to the people who are exiled. So you kind of have to like look through the historical context of what's going on at that time, and that's what's happening. So it's almost like with the Commanders game yesterday. Look, don't laugh, all right? You know what? Go Lions. You know, they deserve to go to a Super Bowl. I'm here for it. Oh, yeah, I heard about that. There's a few people at that. I guess it was good for you guys that the Lions took home the W. But on the Commander side, you're like, why'd you punch that guy in the face? Like, what's going on with that, man? Anyway, I digress. But the Commanders game yesterday, ESPN did not air the game, right? But ESPN will have like the pregame show and the postgame show, right? They're going to offer commentary on the game. That's kind of what's happening in Jeremiah. Jeremiah is offering the pregame and the postgame stuff that's going on. And then one thing I wanted to try tonight, it might be a little weird, but this is the best video I could find. I thought instead of me reading you all 23 verses of what we're about to go into, I found a video that's going to read it to you. So anyway, let me know what you think. I think the guy's voice was a little weird. I did steal this video off of YouTube, and I can't remember the channel. I was going to totally give him credit, but there it is. You could probably just search for it on YouTube and you find it. So without further ado, go ahead and roll that video. It'd be great if there was sound. My accents are terrible. I can't do. Is it working? Did we fail? I think this is actually the first time I've ever put a video.
Jeremiah sent from Jerusalem to the
There you go.
surviving elders among the
All right, let's roll it from the top. Can we roll it
This
from
is
the top?
the
Here we
text
go.
of the letter. Chapter 29. This is the text of the letter that the prophet Jeremiah sent from Jerusalem to the surviving elders among the exiles, and to the priests, the prophets, and all the other people Nebuchadnezzar had carried into exile from Jerusalem to Babylon. This was after King Jehoiakim and the queen mother, the court officials and the leaders of Judah and Jerusalem, the craftsmen and the artisans had gone into exile from Jerusalem. He entrusted the letter to Elasah, son of Shaphan, and to Gemariah, son of Hilkiah, whom Zedekiah king of Judah sent to King Nebuchadnezzar in Babylon. It said, "This is what the Lord Almighty, the God of Israel, says to all those I carried into exile from Jerusalem to Babylon. Build houses and settle down, plant gardens and eat what they produce, marry and have sons and daughters, find wives for your sons and give your daughters in marriage, so that they too may have sons and daughters. Increase in number there, do not decrease. Also seek the peace and prosperity of the city to which I have carried you into exile. Pray to the Lord for it, because if it prospers, you too will prosper. Yes, this is what the Lord Almighty, the God of Israel, says. Do not let the prophets and diviners among you deceive you. Do not listen to the dreams you encourage them to have. They are prophesying lies to you in my name. I have not sent them, declares the Lord. This is what the Lord says. When 70 years are completed for Babylon, I will come to you and fulfill my gracious promise to bring you back to this place. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future. Then you will call upon me and come and pray to me, and I will listen to you. You will seek me and find me when you seek me with all your heart. I will be found by you, declares the Lord, and will bring you back from captivity. I will gather you from all the nations and places where I have banished you, declares the Lord, and will bring you back to the place from which I carried you into exile. You may say, the Lord has raised up prophets for us in Babylon, but this is what the Lord says about the king who sits on David's throne, and all the people who remain in this city, your countrymen who did not go with you into exile. Yes, this is what the Lord Almighty says. I will send the sword, famine, and plague against them, and I will make them like poor figs that are so bad they cannot be eaten. I will pursue them with the sword, famine, and plague, and will make them abhorrent to all the kingdoms of the earth, and an object of cursing and horror, of scorn and reproach among all the nations where I drive them. For they have not listened to my words, declares the Lord, words that I sent to them again and again by my servants the prophets. And you exiles have not listened either, declares the Lord. Therefore hear the word of the Lord, all you exiles, whom I have sent away from Jerusalem to Babylon. This is what the Lord Almighty, the God of Israel, says about Ahab son of Kolaiah and Zedekiah son of Maaseiah, who are prophesying lies to you in my name. I will hand them over to Nebuchadnezzar king of Babylon, and he will put them to death before your very eyes. Because of them, all the exiles from Judah who are in Babylon will use this curse. The Lord treat you like Zedekiah and Ahab, whom the king of Babylon burned in the fire. For they have done outrageous things in Israel. They have committed adultery with their neighbors' wives, and in my name have spoken lies, which I did not tell them to do. I know it, and am a witness to it, declares the Lord.
All right, all right. What'd you think? Kind of weird? I liked it. I think we can do it better. Like if we made our own version, like the summit reading of a book of the Bible, I think it could be cool. Anyway, I thought that would be better than me like butchering every single one of those names and like fumbling over my words and stuff as I read it to you. So here's why I think Jeremiah 29:11 is taken slightly out of context. Because, and I say slightly because I do think that it's a good verse, right? Like, I don't think if you walk up to somebody and you say, God has good plans for you, he says it right here in Jeremiah 29:11, I'm not going to look at you and be like, you're wrong. Like, no, he does have good plans for you. But what we have to remember is that not only was this letter written to those who are in exile, but they're in exile because God put them there. Right? Like, this was a moment where God intentionally walked them through this. And on top of that, it's not like they had a bad day and you're like, just know the plans that God has for you. Like, no, we're talking 70 years in this captivity to the point where God is like, settle down, get comfy, marry some people, root for this city's success because you're going to succeed if that's the case. Like it's going to be a long time that you're in here. And he's doing this, if you kind of listen to the last part of that letter, not even the whole chapter, but of that letter in particular, he's talking about like all the terrible stuff that was going on, all the people that were living in sin within the nation of Judah. That's why the Babylons came and took over. Like God used them as a tool to bring correction into these people. And so it's not like God was like, I want to send you through bad things, but he's coming in and he's saying, in order to make you better, I got to break you down first. Like I have to bring this correction in, this hard thing in order to make you better. In fact, when you go to boot camp, that's like one of the things they do, right? Like their goal is to break you down at first to build you back as a unit together. And so, yeah, I don't think that even necessarily every bad thing in your life is God ordained. To be honest, I can't tell the difference. I don't know if you're going through a hard time because God is intentionally walking you through that hard time, or if it's something outside of that, like somebody else's sin affecting you. I don't know, but what I do know is that God may walk you through an exile. It might happen. And that's kind of the unfun part to talk about when it comes to Jeremiah 29:11, right? I think about blacksmiths for a second, where like the way they shape and form the sword is they like stick it into this burning hot furnace, and then they pull it out and they start beating that thing into the shape that it's supposed to be in, right? Like if you look at that as a symbolic or a metaphor thing for your life, it's not always going to be comfortable to get shaped into who God wants you to be. It might hurt sometimes. It might be a process where like this stuff that you've hidden for so long has to come out, and that stuff might be painful for it to come out, but it's got to come out for God to shape you into who he wants you to be, you know? And so sometimes God's plan for you is to walk through some fire. Sometimes God's plan for you is for life to get a little hard once in a while. And I don't think he's doing that to be mean, or like the big, you know, what's the almost like the character of God, like the big, scary, angry old guy with a white beard in the clouds waiting to strike it with a lightning bolt every time you say a cuss word. Like that's not what it is, but rather it's God coming in and being like, I need to shape you into something, and in order to do that, it might hurt a little bit. But all in all, man, like I can't tell you what is God ordained and what is not. But what I do know is Romans chapter 8, verse 28, which says, we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. And for me, like I've walked through some hard stuff in my life. Some of it, sure, maybe God walked me through. Some of it was 100% somebody else's sin affecting me and like sending me through a hard time, right? But in all of those things, I can rest in the fact that I know that God is going to use every hardship that I've walked through in my life for good. And you're not going to see it all the time when you're in the midst of the hardship, but it's going to happen. You know, I think back to like when I was struggling with like sicknesses and stuff like that, I didn't know what was going on in college. Like it put me in a position, and this may have been something that was God ordained in my life. It put me in a position where I had to stop being concerned about myself and fully trusting God with it, because there was literally nothing I could do. And it ended up not being like all that serious stuff. But at the time, like I just had no clue what was going on, you know? And I found myself like popping awake at night, like freaking out that I was going to have like a heart attack or going to die or something like that. And I found myself having to be in a position where I was like, God, I trust you with my beginning and I trust you with my end. And I had to say that to myself over and over and over again. But that hardship led me to a spot that made me fully put my trust into God's hands. Something in my life that I don't think was God ordained was when my parents got divorced, and I had to walk through that, and it was tough and it was difficult and I didn't deal with it well. But moving into like high school ministry or just ministry as a whole, right? If the statistic is true that 50% of marriages end in divorce, but then every American family has roughly 2.5 children, then I know when I walk into a room of just about anybody, but like middle schoolers, high schoolers, even young adults, that there is something that I know I can instantly relate with somebody about. And not necessarily a good thing, But me being on the other side of it, and if somebody's walking through that struggle, I know that I can come in beside them. I can help point them towards Jesus. So no, I don't think God ordained my parents to get divorced, but I do know that God used that tough moment in my life to help further his kingdom, right? To help use me to help other people walk through hard times as well. And so I think what God is saying in verse 11 to these people, and really ultimately to us, is to just trust me. They're going through this hard time. And just imagine the things that they've seen, right? Their cities got taken over. It's not like you walk in and you're like, and this city's mine now. No, it's violent. People die. You know what I'm saying? And then you get sent into an area that's not your own. They have seen some probably terrible, terrible things. But God is looking at me and saying, I need you to trust me right now. I'm going to rebuild you. I'm going to build you back, and it's going to be good. Right? The future that I got in store for you, it might take a while, it might take longer than you want, but the future I got is going to be so much better than where you are right now. But I need you to walk through this hard spot with me right now. That's what that verse is saying. That's what that verse is communicating. And in some ways, it's probably great that we give that verse to high school graduates, because I don't know about you guys, but I feel like I graduated high school, and that's when a lot of tough stuff started hitting me. A lot of stuff where I had to start walking through and figuring things out. Not even just from the standpoint of how do I be an adult, but from the standpoint of man, life is actually difficult. It's not like high school difficult where your boyfriend or your girlfriend breaks up with you and you're sad for a little bit. Actually real life difficult, It's I'm going to all these doctors to figure out what's wrong with me, but nobody can come up with an answer. Kind of difficult. My parents are going through this season and I can't do anything. I just have to watch them deal with it. Kind of difficult, And so God is just saying, trust me in this. And I once heard someone talk about leadership, and you have to forgive me because I completely forget who it was. To be honest, it was a TikTok video, but it made a lot of sense when I was listening to it. And it was this lady, she was talking about leadership, and she has this theory called the marble theory. And you can probably Google the marble theory and then figure out who said it. But the marble theory, she said, was basically her going to her kids and asking, why did they trust somebody? What caused you to put trust into that person? And her kids would say things like, well, when the lunchroom was extra crowded, my friend would give up half of her seat so I could sit next to her at the lunch table with the rest of my friends. Or this one thing, I like this little cake in the lunch line and they were running out of it. My friend bought me one because they knew that I liked it. That kind of stuff. Or, you get into more grown-up examples. It's the boss who heard that something tough happened and pokes his head in your office door and asks how you're doing. It's not like trust was built because you had to put trust in that person. Trust is built because they showed their kindness and their love for you. And every time one of those acts happened, it's like they take a marble and they put it into a jar. Right? And then over time, you have a jar full of marbles. And so you know that you can trust that person because of what they've already deposited into your life. But sometimes in leadership, we get it backwards, where we go to a group of people who we have never done that with. We've never asked how they're doing or anything like that. And we just stand in front of them and we're like, you have to trust me right now. That's kind of a hard position to be in. When something is actively going wrong, to be a leader who has never poured into a group of people, to look at them and be like, you're going to have to trust me. What you would rather have is a leader who is already checking in with you, who already cares about you, who already wants what's best for you and has put those marbles into your jar, is now coming in and be like, I don't even have to tell you to trust me, you just do, because I've already been showing up for you. And if we take that example and we apply it to God, think of all the times that God has put marbles into our jars. Back when God flooded the earth, he said he was never going to do it again. and he held true to that promise. Like he said he would restore the Davidic line, basically meaning the line of David, and he did it through Jesus. He said that there was going to be a perfect sacrifice for our sins so that we could get into heaven, and that was through Jesus. When Jesus ascended, he said, I'm going to send another, and that's when the Holy Spirit came, and that's what lives inside of you on salvation. You know, and those are just biblical examples. These aren't even examples in your own life. You know? For me, it was the moments where I found myself like face first on my bedroom floor and being like, God, I don't know what I'm going to do next, but I know that you got this, and seeing him show up for me. It was the time when I was trying to figure out how I was going to get to my internship at Park Valley because I didn't own a car, and I was thinking about taking out extra in my student loan so I could afford like a beat up junky car, which is a terrible idea, by the way. And me walking around Walmart, like waiting for this prescription to come in down in Lynchburg, and my mom calling me up and being like, hey, so your grandma can't legally drive anymore, so I can just use her car. And I was thinking you could use my car for the summer for like whatever you needed. Right? Like those are God depositing these marbles into my jar so that when times do get tough, instead of me like looking at the tough situation and being like, God, what the heck are you doing? Like instead of me coming about and be like, why would you let this terrible thing happen to me? Instead of those things happening, it's going to turn into conversations with me and God, basically sitting in my car and be like, you know what, God? I'm a little nervous. I'm a little scared. But you have never let me down before. You have time and time again showed up for me. There's no reason that you won't do it again. So whatever happens, I'm putting that trust in your hands. I don't think that's even a conversation that you have to have the first time that you accept Christ into your life. Like for me, it's a conversation that happens over and over and over again. It's the sleepless nights with a kid where I'm like, God, just help her fall asleep. You know, it's the little things where I'm like, I don't know where this is going. I don't know how I'm going to do this. I don't know how I'm going to make this happen, but I trust it. Like I trust you. I trust the process. There was a time, a really weird time, where when I was just doing the online campus, I wasn't doing young adults yet, and Tim, Pastor Tim, our executive pastor, who's my direct boss, came into the office one day. It was kind of funny. He just sat down and he was like, we're thinking about making a change with you, but I'm not ready to tell you what it is yet. And I'm like, great. Like, where am I going, you know? And he was like, just be praying. Just be praying about anything like that. And I'm like, all right. And so I was praying about it and thinking on it. And there was like this weird thing inside of me for like a few weeks before I had heard anything, where I was like, I don't know what it is, but I think I'm going to say yes. And it actually took a lot in me to not walk into Tim's office and be like, I don't know what it is, but I'm in. You know, like I had this peace over me. I had this calm over me. And then eventually Tim came to me and brought up the idea of me taking over the young adult ministry, which, as we know, happened. But it was like this moment of like, I could have been terrified by that sentence, but instead, because I took it to God and I put my trust in God, it was just like, man, whatever you have next, I'm in. Like, that's how trust is built. So when you're walking through these hard times, just know that God has always been there for you. He's never let you down before. He's not going to start now. Sometimes it might take a while. You know, when I was having a hard time getting to college, I thought the plan was to go to school for 4 years, graduate, start being a high school pastor somewhere. That's not what happened. I went to community college. I struggled. I figured out a work ethic, transferred to Liberty. 6.5 years later, I graduated and then didn't have a job right out the gate. You know, like it took a few months even beyond that to eventually get hired here. So it's like, God's like, yeah, I got a plan for you. I need you to trust me in the hardships. I need you to trust me when it doesn't happen right away. I mean, it's great, right? When you get like that instant gratification, like you pray for something and then it happens, that's fantastic, but that's not always how it works. Like God's not Amazon Prime, you know? I know, it's crazy. It doesn't always take 2 days. You're wearing an Amazon shirt, Spencer. But that's just not how it works. So what I want you guys to know and what I want you to understand is I want you to trust God where you go. I want you to trust God in whatever season of life you're in. And I want you to be where God has you right now. I want you to do ministry where God has you right now. Sometimes myself, I fall into the trap of like doing math with my age. You know, so Maisie's 3, and I'm like, all right, in 10 years, when Maisie's 13, that's going to be pretty cool. I can sleep in again. I'm going to be 45. You know what I'm saying? And then I'll be like, shoot, by the time she's 23, like, I'm going to be 55. And I'm like, by the time Maisie's my age, I'm going to be like pushing 70. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is crazy. And I start getting in my head about like, dude, I'm going to be dead, like, before I know it, you know? And I get into this crazy space, and I find myself all the time having to be like, but I have her right now at 3. Like, why am I getting so concerned and worried and freaked out about 10, 20 years down the road when I need to just be spending right now with her? I need to give her some snuggles when she's not feeling good. You know? I need to put her in timeout when she's being a little hooligan. Like, like I need to live in today. I need to do ministry today. And when I say do ministry, I'm not even talking about like go to Bible school, get your degree, and go work for a church somewhere. I mean, if that's what you want to do, that's fantastic. I absolutely love it. I think it's one of the greatest jobs on the face of the planet. I get to do some pretty cool stuff. But when I say do ministry, like do it as your job. Do it with your family. Like just wherever you are, be that beacon of light for someone. And I think if you just chase God, you being that beacon of light is just naturally going to come. I'm not saying be something that you're not. I'm just saying the more you chase Jesus, the more people are going to see peace in you. And they're going to come to you and ask you about it. Right? The more you chase Jesus, the more positive you're going to be. And guess who people would rather be around? A positive person. And at some point, they're going to ask you questions, and you're going to respond. Right? It's through building things and doing ministry that way that you'll eventually get an opportunity to have a conversation about Jesus with somebody. Like when I got hired at Food Lion, no one asked me anything about my religion. I think it's probably technically illegal if you were, unless you like work for a church and you have bylaws and stuff that protect you. It's a whole other thing for all you lawyers out there. But like no one asked me that, but it was through conversations that I had with coworkers and my managers and stuff like, oh, Zach, what are you doing like with the rest of your life? Like, do you want to work here? I'm like, no. I'm actually going to school. And they're like, oh, cool. What's your major? And I'm like, youth ministry, you know? And it's like through conversations like that and me just building trust with people, like me sweeping the floors good, putting items in bags, helping people out to their cars, pulling the carts in, like working hard, that people then started to trust me more. And then current events would happen and be like, Zach, what do you think about this? I don't think they were even like looking for like a Christian answer, but they were just interested in what my opinion was because they trusted me. And then through that, I share the gospel with people. You know? It's like time that happens. So just do it where you are. So I have some tips for you guys, some tips and tricks to trust God a little bit more. Because it can be difficult, right? Have you guys ever done like a trust fall where you close your eyes and you fall off a fence? Have you gone to that extreme yet? Yeah. I mean, you got like the cheesy kindergarten trust fall where you just close your eyes and you fall backwards. I did it once with a friend where I closed my eyes, I was standing on a fence and he caught me. We had to get strategic because if you keep your knee out, you're going to like kill him. So you have to kind of put your knee to the side and catch him and stuff. Yeah, it was crazy. Anyway, it can be difficult to trust God sometimes, especially if you don't know where things are going. But number one is you can verbalize it. I found that helps me so much in so many different areas if I verbalize how I'm already feeling or how I even want to feel, you know? So like if I'm having a hard time trusting God, it helps me to say out loud, God, I trust you with this, to like make that declaration. If I'm at home and I'm feeling grumpy, I will look at Catherine and be like, I'm feeling kind of grumpy right now. Right? And now she knows she's in the loop, right? She knows that I'm a little moody for whatever reason. I didn't get my ice cream today or something. Like whatever the case is, like I put her in the loop with it, you know? The second thing you can do, like we were just talking about, live in today and trust God with tomorrow. Just be where you are today. It's okay to make plans. It's okay to like apply places, to have dreams and desires and to work towards those things. Just don't forget about today. It's so easy for us to do. It's so easy for us to be like, I'm not going to care about the people around me because in like 5 years, I want to be in a different place. Like, no, maybe God's got you right then, right there for someone specifically. I don't know about you guys, but I've had people come in and out of my life who I needed. You know, in hindsight, it's 2020, but like I had people come into my life that I don't talk to a whole lot now. It's not for bad reasons or anything like that. You know, you just drift apart. But like people who I actually needed at that time. So sometimes God might put you in someone's life for a season, for a reason, to help them get through something, to work through something, to be a light for that person. So maybe those 5 years that you feel like you're stuck here, God may very well have you here intentionally for a purpose. So like, yeah, be excited for where you're going to be in 5 years. Strive for wherever you want to go. You want to move to a different state. You want to go to a different college, whatever the case is. That's great. But don't forget about today and the people around you right now. And then the last thing is to just do ministry where you are. And like I was talking about before, I don't think doing ministry necessarily means you have to get a job at a church. I mean, if that's what you want to do, that's fantastic. In fact, if that's what you want to do, I would love to chat with you about it and help you start moving in that direction. But some of you guys are doing ministry wherever you're working. Some of you guys are doing ministry within your families. Some of you guys are prepping yourself now for the future family that you're going to have. Like, that's doing ministry. The more you chase Jesus, the more you just have conversations with people, the more that you are loving and you are kind, the more you are doing ministry with people. There's a verse, I bring it up all the time. I should probably like remember where it's at, but it's like this subtle verse in the book of Romans that says, God's kindness is intended to win people to him. Like the guy who created everything chooses kindness as his go-to method to bring people closer to him. So for me, the guy who's created nothing, why would I choose a different method than kindness to win people to the gospel? And I'm not saying you got to turn into a doormat and let people walk all over you, but you can be kind about it. I think back on Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. You know, there's a whole chunk. It's like Romans 13 that starts talking about respecting the government and all that stuff, which always gets a little sticky sometimes, especially around election season. You know, it's like, man, I'm not going to respect that person. And you're like, all right, get over yourself. But like, there's this whole verse on like respecting the government. We are blessed to live in a nation where there is no law against you being a Christian. There is no law that prohibits you from worshiping collectively. There is no law that prohibits you from saying that you love Jesus out loud, right? In fact, you are protected. Now, persecution may come. It happens. But in the United States, it is rare. It's very rare. In fact, I think a lot of people living in the United States think that persecution is somebody says something mean about you because of your faith. And look, I mean, that sucks. But in other countries, it's illegal to be a Christian. Bibles are outlawed. There are other countries that if you profess Jesus, they will kill you, right? We have missionaries in some countries that if they come and they say something from main stage, I have to cut them out of the live stream altogether because if the government of the nation that they're in finds out what they're doing there, they either have to dip out real quick or they won't be on earth anymore. You know? But if you look back at Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, right, where the government clearly said, you have to bow down to this statue of the king, right? Like you have to make this king an idol in your life. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, when the time came, didn't bow down. But like, go read through the story, right? Because then it basically says they get taken into custody. They go before the king. They explain themselves. It's like, hey, we can't do that because God is our number one. This is the Zach version, forgive me. Right? Like God is my number one. And then they get put into the furnace. The interesting thing about the furnace is that it was so hot that the guard putting them into the furnace died. they still went in. So how in a moment when their government told them to directly disobey God, did they still respect the government? They were willing to take the punishment. They said, you can do whatever you want to do to me. I'm not going to bow down to the statue. Right? At no point does that story reference them fighting. At no point does it reference them throwing punches. The only crazy thing it references is them dancing around in the furnace with a fourth guy hanging out with them now. Like, even if you feel like the government puts you in a position where you have to go against the law in order to follow Jesus, like, you just got to be willing to take the punishment. Don't be disrespectful with it. And I think when you do it that way, man, you're going to lead a lot more people to Jesus. I mean, I think in China, right, like Bibles are outlawed, Christianity is illegal. That's probably one of the largest church networks in the world. It's like they've tried so hard to suppress Christianity, to make it illegal, to make it not a thing that's there, but it's thriving. And it's not because people are like trying to take out government officials or anything like that. It's because they're just chasing Jesus. And they're like, you can throw me in jail if you want to. That's cool. You'd be in good company. You know what I'm saying? Paul wrote a lot of these letters in the Bible from prison. But do ministry where you are. Love people. Be respectful of them. Listen to them. Sometimes I think, like, we think we got to correct everybody all the time. Sometimes people just want to be heard and they don't need to be corrected. I don't know about you fellas out there. I'm a fix-it person. So, like, sometimes people come to me with a problem. I'm like, all right, here's A, B, and C of what you need to do next to fix this issue. But that's not always what people need. Sometimes they just want to be heard. Sometimes I try to be very intentional. Like, I've sat in a room with people before where I know that they're struggling. I've done it a few times, and I've sat down, and I'm like, let me kick things off. You can say whatever you want to say right now. I'm not going to judge you. I'm not going to hold it against you. If you're angry, be angry. Like, just get it out. Like, I'm a safe person that you can do this with. You know? Like, be kind, be loving, be respectful. If someone hates you, love them. The Bible even says, like, if you respond to hatred with kindness, it's going to be like you dump heaping coals on their head. Like, it's going to drive them insane. That they can't bother you. That they can't get to you. And the only way you can truly do that is if you just chase Jesus with everything you got. That, like, Jesus is number one, and whatever is number two in your life, it is a distant second. Right? Because then you're walking and be like, dude, you can say whatever you want to say about me. I am not concerned. You know, we let a lot of people affect our lives who should really have no say in our lives at all. You know? Like, we let all these, like, influencers on social media try and convince us to buy these bear cups. They don't even know your name. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's influencers on TikTok that, like, link things to the TikTok shop. They're like, trust me, this is the best projector you're ever going to buy, and it's only $10. You know, one, if you're buying a projector for $10, it's not going to be the best projector you've ever bought. Two, they don't even know your name. Why should you trust them? You walk into a car dealership, this guy you just met is like, trust me, these are super reliable cars. And you're like, it's a brand new car. There's no possible way you could know that. Like, why would you trust them? Like, sure, you ask them questions, they have knowledge and stuff like that, but, like, why do we let all these people have influence in our lives who have no business having influence in our lives? It doesn't make any sense to me. You know, like, one person says something mean about you. Like, do they even know your middle name? Like, do they know anything about your life? Like, who cares? Let them say something mean. They're going to end up alone if they're mean to every single person around them. People just don't want to be around that. But if you're loving and you're kind, people will flock to you. And it opens up doors to do ministry. If you're here tonight and you've never accepted Jesus into your life, like, that is ultimately step one to everything. You guys have heard me say this like 1,000 times, but the way I like to describe salvation is like, if you don't have Jesus, it's like you're riding in the passenger seat of a monster truck flying downhill and there's nobody in the driver's seat. like it's complete chaos. Like, yeah, you might be strapped in with a seatbelt, but like you are not in control of where this thing's heading, right? But if you're in a relationship with Jesus, it's like being on a roller coaster, you know? Like you sit in the seat, you pull the thing over your head, it gets buckled in, somebody comes around and like jiggles it and checks on it and makes sure you're good and you're safe. And then you go up and down these hills and these twists and these turns and these loops, but you're always connected to the track. Like, you accept Jesus into your life, you're not going to miraculously never be sad again, but you will always be connected to the track. You'll always be in a relationship with Jesus. He's not going to let you fly off of that thing. So you want to close your eyes and bow your head. If you're here tonight and you want to accept Jesus into your life and you've never done it before, you can pray something like this. You can say, God, I know I'm not perfect, but Father, tonight I'm choosing to trust you. I'm choosing to enter into a relationship with Jesus. And Father, for all the messed up stuff I've done in my life, or even the messed up stuff that I've done today, God, I'm putting all of that into your hands. If you prayed that, I just want you to stick your hand up real quick. Just stick it right back down. Father, I thank you for tonight, just everybody who's here. And God, I thank you for just the ability for us to deep dive into your word and to take a verse that is a great verse, that is a good verse, that is very true, even when it stands alone, but to deep dive it and to just know how much you love us and to see the full context of what's going on and how we can apply that to our lives, God, that we can trust you in every situation. And God, I pray that you help us trust you. I pray that you use us as a community to help one another continue to trust you, God, that we're a group of people that are always pointing people back to you. We're a group of people that are constantly bringing people in. God, that we're a group of people that builds people up and doesn't tear them down. I just pray for all that in your name. Amen.